Belarusians in exile are training to fight against Russian forces in Ukraine. At this undisclosed location in Poland, new volunteers for the small Belarusian Pohonia regiment are developing their military skills. The fighters will disperse into various units of the Ukrainian Army's International Legion.
У них 7 дней идет теории, их воплощение, то есть это тактическая медицина, это миноподрывное дело, это топография, это тактика малой группы. Потом у нас идет 3 дня огневых, вот конкретно здесь на стрельбище.
Named after the Belarusian word for pursuit, the Pohonia regiment's exact numbers are unclear. But a support group in the Czech Republic says it has equipped at least 100 Pohonia volunteers.
We are connecting with these suppliers, military suppliers. For example, we are buying a lot of used British equipment, British Army equipment.
Now based in Prague, Belarusian exile Kirill Yakimovich hopes the Pohonia regiment will grow into a force that could play a role in ousting Belarus's autocratic leader Alyaksandr Lukashenka. He allowed Russia to use Belarus as a staging ground for its invasion into neighboring Ukraine.
Russian forces are everywhere. They're sending bombs and rockets from our country to Ukraine. So our goal is not only to win this war for the Ukraine, but to liberate our country.
In August 2020, Lukashenko was able to cling to power by unleashing a brutal police crackdown on mass protests across Belarus. Thousands were rounded up, jailed, and beaten. The nationwide demonstrations erupted after Lukashenko declared victory in a presidential election widely seen as rigged.
More or less everyone realizes that the Belarusian regime is still standing in I would say mostly due to the support of Russian autocrat Vladimir Putin. And in this regard, Lukashenko and Putin are, in the eyes of pro-democratic Belarusians, are the two-headed enemy.
Some Belarusian police officers refused to take part in the crackdown and left the country. They have formed a group called Bipol that calls for armed resistance against the Lukashenko regime. Others joined a Belarusian militia in Ukraine that calls itself the Kastus Kalinowski Regiment. It has been fighting against Russian forces since the early days of the war in Ukraine.
Я збіг з Білорусі через репресії, ось жив у Києві, і тому питання пойти на війну мені не представилось, тому що я ведав, що Росія впливала на те, що відбувалося у Білорусі.
Between the Kalinowski Regiment and those trained by Pohonia, it's estimated that around 1,000 Belarusians are fighting in Ukraine, according to analyst Artyom Shreibman. For now, those numbers would likely be far too small to pose a direct threat to Lukashenko's state security forces.
His hold on power now is quite tight. This is not the fighting force to topple a consolidated authoritarian regime. However, it depends on the scenario of the political crisis in Belarus. If we imagine one day that there is another popular uprising, where the state is somehow paralyzed, as it was for some weeks in August of 2020. And then hundreds of armed and well-coordinated men appear in this crowd. Well, they can sway the fight, the struggle in the protester side, of course. But for this to happen, you need to have first the chaos in the governance within the country.
After an initial surge of volunteers, it's unclear how many more Belarusian exiles will want to fight in Ukraine. But it's possible the numbers could grow if Ukrainian forces gain momentum on the battlefield.
So if Ukrainian army is able to retake cities, retake Kherson, for example, retake parts of Donbas, then it would be probably a good advertisement for potential Belarusian volunteers to join.
As Belarusian volunteers continue to train, Russian forces are mostly stalled in southern and eastern Ukraine, with the outcome anything but certain.